What's going on, guys? Kivox here, and we're going to be talking about the homebrew rules that I use in my D&D session. I've been DMing for a little while now, probably about maybe 4 or 5 years now. So I started with D&D 5e, and pretty soon we're going to be somewhat switching over to 1D&D. I don't really know how compatible it's going to be. I know they've been saying that it's compatible for a while now. We'll see what really happens, but I want to talk about the homebrew rules that I use. It's one of my favorite topics is homebrew stuff. I love homebrew stuff. I pretty much divided them into like the basic rules, and then skills and saves, and then spells, items, and I think that's about it. There's like 4 categories and then several rules in each thing. We're going to start with the basics. They're the ones that pretty much I always have on in all of my games, and I would say most other people that DM will also use 1 or 2 or all of these rules as well. One of them is kind of like a little cheeky one that I just hate, so I just always use it. I don't hate the rule. I hate the rule, the thing that the rule fixes. Anyway, let's just jump into it. The first one obviously is the bonus action potion usage. Simple. Everybody uses it. It's common. I'll always use that just because it just works. And I hope they change that for 1D&D. I don't know if they're doing anything different for 1D&D, but that's a basic one. You can use a bonus action to use a potion. You use an action to administer a potion. It just makes sense. I like it. It's smoother. You can administer a potion as well as take a potion in one turn. But I've also played around with possibly doing 2 potions. So you can use a bonus action to take a potion, and you can use an action to take a potion. So you can take 2 potions in one round. That's something I've thought about doing. That's something if you want to be more generous with stuff, or you are more stingy with potions, so your players are probably not going to double down, double fist some potions. So that's one. Another big one is flanking, +2 to flanking, opposite sides of an enemy. And the way that I usually run it is if it's a larger creature, if you are on either side, so let's say it's a 2x2, if you are on either side, it'll work. So as long as you're within the thing. But if you get into the corners, then you have to be on opposite corners. Obviously, follow all the rules that, determine it based on also blind sight. So if you have blind sight, usually it doesn't apply. You can't flank somebody with blind sight just because they're aware from all directions, and they don't actually see. They see blindly, or tremor sense, something like that. That isn't a direction based. It's kind of like all around you. Or if you have a bunch of eyeballs that can turn in different directions. That's another thing too. Again, very, very basic rules. Most people use those. Now, this one is, I don't know if everybody uses this, but this is like the improved critical option. So like the crunchy crits that a lot of people use as well. When I found out about it, I was just like, yes, please give me those crunchy crits, because so many times people crit and it just feels weaker. A crit should always be stronger. So it should always, some people even do max damage. So you just roll your max damage on both die. But the way that I run it is basically max damage on half the die that you're rolling. So you just kind of got to know though too. So you have to either have that written down or do the math really quick. Because if you're rolling if you're like a paladin that's critting and using a level 2 or 3 spell slot, you're doing 90 damage after, which recently happened in one of my games. Somebody I think did 80 something or 90 damage with their crit. It was brutal, but he almost killed the enemy in one hit, but not quite. Now the next one is a little bit more rare. I would say that I've seen it a lot less in games, or a lot less people talking about it. And that is, to help somebody with a skill check, you have to be proficient in that skill. And obviously it has to make sense. So if somebody's trying to remember something, you're proficient in it, you're using your history, and you are also trying to remember, right? You're giving them advantage. Another thing that you can add to that is if you have 2 people that are trying to help, you have maybe instead of doing advantage, you have advantage plus whatever their modifier is, or half their modifier, or you can add a 3rd person to it, and maybe a 4th person if it's really, really important. So That's a way also, if a character already has advantage on it, they can then add something else. They can add to the assistance as well. What players will do sometimes is the person that doesn't have proficiency will try to do the thing, and the person that does have proficiency will help them. So therefore, this person will get advantage, which in some ways kind of like, it's a little meta, but it does work because the person that doesn't have proficiency doesn't have all the bonus that the other person would have. But what you can do, if you want to prevent that, you can say that you both have to have proficiency in it to have somebody else help you. Because if you weren't very good at it, somebody is helping you. Sure, they're helping you, but they're not really doing any better than they would because you suck at it. But if you're already good at it and somebody else is also good at it, is helping you, now it's like, okay, now we can actually work together. Because have you ever tried to help somebody that doesn't know anything? They're not probably going to do it better than you are because you know how to do it. So you're helping them. They're doing better than they normally would, but they still wouldn't do as good as you would. That's how usually skilled traits work, I would say. So something to think about. Now, this is the spicy one that some of you may disagree with me on. This is, I think, number 5 now. So this is the big one. I am not a fan of Electrum pieces, of EP. I don't like the fact that it's half a gold piece. It's like if all currency is on the metric system and then we throw like one thing in there that isn't in the metric system, right? It's like, it doesn't work. I hate it. I hate it so much. I just remove it. So that's like a rule that I have that I get rid of it. I've even thought about making everything just gold or everything just silver, just to make my life easier so I don't have to worry about converting and stuff. I do play on a VTT, so it does already automate a lot of the stuff for us, but it's just so annoying trying to like, oh, I'm gonna, this is worth this many copper, and then all the players are like, wait, hold on, how many silver is that again? And it's just, yes, they should be doing their part on remembering, but just it slows down so much. For the most part, I handle gold and stuff. It's usually gold for most of the things, and then change is usually done with other things. But usually when I reward them with something, it's usually gold, unless it's like right at the beginning, or even at the beginning, it'll be like, you get 5 gold pieces for completing this quest early on, like that's a lot of gold. So that's a big one. Those are the basics, okay? The basics. Skills and saves. So this is the category where we talk even more about skills, skill checks, and stuff like that. Inspiration on nat 20s. Also, having up to 3 inspirations. That's the way I run it. I like how it works. I've also dabbled in resetting inspiration at the end of the day because players would just sit on their inspiration, stack up 3, forget that they have it. Important things happen. They don't use it. So I thought about that. I did that for a while. I just, if you take a long rest, you lose your inspiration. And I've also dabbled in when you wake up, you have 1 inspiration. I've also, which I think I'm going to keep around if they take a long, not a long rest, but like a downtime, like let's say a week, right? You get 1 inspiration per week of downtime that you take, of not doing anything, just chilling, just relaxing, maybe doing some shopping, a little bit of shopping, but no questing. That inspires them to rest a little bit more, to take a chill pill, just to like relax and be inspired in some way. So that's something that I'm going to do now, that I thought about while I was actually writing this up, because I was like, I want to inspire long rest or downtime, right? Which is technically like a really, really long rest. Inspiration on nat 20s works really well and everybody gets excited about it, but it's only on public nat 20s because sometimes we hide the rolls, which we're going to get to a little bit later. But nat 20s, inspiration. Nat 1s, you lose your inspiration. Losing inspiration on a nat 1 works really well because it pushes your players to use their inspiration. Maybe not right when they get it, but they pay attention to it, because when they have one and they lose it, they're like, oh crap. And again, not your fault. The DM, you as the DM, you didn't do it to them. You didn't make them lose it. You didn't decide to have them lose it. So it's all on them. If they don't use it, they lose it. That's just how it is. You may also want to think about something fun to do if somebody rolls 2 20s in a row, or they have advantage and they roll 2 20s, like for both of them. That's always fun. What I've done in the past is allow them to have a everlasting auto crit. So they can have it until they use it. So they don't lose it if they don't use it, and the other one doesn't affect it. It would maybe go in their item or something somewhere where they can say, insta crit or auto crit, and it just gives them that one thing. Or maybe it lasts like a week, or maybe lasts a month or something, so that they don't sit on it for years until like the big bad comes or something, and then they just like figure out. I mean, if they did that though, if they like did that much, maybe let them have it. Maybe let them have it. Declaring your inspiration before you roll it. I think that it's really important to do that. I like the way it works. It doesn't slow everything down where you're like, oh, I want to re-roll that. Or you said it and they're like, oh, I want to re-roll it. As you're saying, it misses or whatever, because that's the rules, or those are the rules. So this is the way I see it, is you have your inspiration points or whatever, and you know that this is an important roll. You feel it's inspiring. You feel like it's super important. So you decide, I'm going to use my inspiration on this because I need to succeed on it. I like doing that. Also, it frees up the lucky feat. If somebody takes the lucky feat, to have the lucky feat work normally, because then they could re-roll. I took away the lucky feat to make enemies re-roll. I'm not a fan of that. I think it was Lucky that does that. I'm not a fan of it. It slows down too much. I try to trim the fat to make things just run a little bit smoother, and I think that slows down too much. The lucky feat already slows down enough where one of my players has it, and whenever they use it, it's like, I want to use lucky when they remember, because that's another feat that people tend to forget a lot that they have. So we play on a VTT, so it slows down even more because it just does. But lucky's fun. I probably wouldn't let more than one player have it in a game, unless it's just like a not important game. But if it's something that I plan on going on for a couple of years, I probably wouldn't do it. I'd probably be like, yeah, can we pick something else? Can you try to do, do you really have to have it? That's one of the reasons I like to declare inspiration, because I just think it makes more sense. I mentioned hiding rolls before. I hide most, like 95% of checks or saves that characters do. Not saves in combat. So if somebody's, it's a fireball, they got to make a dexterity saving throw. That's not hidden. None of that is hidden. They know if they succeed or fail. That's not a problem. I hide things like characters are trying to stealth, because I know what players do. When I play, I can't help but sometimes say like, okay, maybe I change my mind. I decide to do something else. So I have them roll stealth, and then they tell me what they do, and then I tell them what happens, or I tell them if they succeed, or I tell them, who made a little bit of noise while that was happening. So that's the best example of a reason to hide checks, especially stealth checks. But even persuasion, like if you hide a persuasion check from somebody, and you tell them he doesn't believe you, or he acts like suspicious of you after you say this to him. You don't know if you failed or succeeded, but maybe that's not the best example. Let's say you're trying to insight somebody, right? Oh, I want to know, does he look like suspicious? Does he seem like he's lying to me or something? Which I don't really like insight for stuff like that, but that's the best example. Most people use insight in that way, I think. But I would say in that scenario, it's perfect. You fail the save, right? Or you fail the check. You rolled really badly on your insight, but you don't know that as the player. I know that. So now I tell you, let's say the NPC is lying, right? I tell you, yeah, seems like he's telling the truth, right? But you don't know. You don't know as the player that you failed. So you just have to believe him at that point. And the reason I do that is because I want to take away the chance that somebody's gonna like meta or just decide like, oh, he's lying. I've also had a player before roll something and then he failed the insight and he still didn't want to follow the roll, basically, which always sucks when somebody does that, but it happens, right? But if you remove that, you just tell them, yeah, you believe what he's saying, even though, and then obviously if they succeed, then you wouldn't believe him, but you don't know. You just have to then act out as the player. I think it works really well. Now, while we're talking about hiding stuff, hiding rolls, the big one that I love to use is hiding the death saving throws from everybody, except for the DM, obviously. Just the player doesn't know. I roll for them, or if you're playing in person, you have them roll in a tower and you don't tell them. And you also roll all 5 rolls. So obviously, if they get 3 successes, they're stable, right? But they're not conscious. So you would still roll all 5. You would keep rolling unless somebody came over and stabilized and revived them or cast a spell on them or whatever. Not revive, cast a spell on them. So it keeps the tension up. Your players will meta. I mean, I keep saying that a lot of my rules are to prevent my players from cheating, kind of. And I consider meta kind of cheating, right? It kind of is. At least I think it is. So let's say they know what the roles are. Let's say your downed party member has 2 successes and 0 fails. Those party members, the other party members that are conscious, are not going to be as stressed out. They're not going to come over and be like, "Oh my gosh, are you okay?" They're just going to be like, "He'll be fine. I'll get to him in like the next round because he has at least like 2 more rounds that he could probably fail. So don't worry about it." This way, they may have died 2 rounds ago. They may have died, you know what I mean? They may have gotten 2 nat 1s in a row and failed and died and it's over. So, do it. Try it. Just try it out. If you just try to see how it is, it creates so much more tension and it creates so much more excitement for, oh man, we have to get there. We got to pick him up. He's going to go down. So try it. Give it a shot. We're talking about getting knocked out or getting, taken, like getting down to 0 HP. So let's talk about exhaustion. The 1D&D rules for exhaustion are awesome. I love them. They're great. You have 9 levels of exhaustion before you get to the 10th, and then on the 10th one, you're out. You're done, right? So really good. But now, when you get knocked out, you gain 1 level of exhaustion. If you wanted to be mean, you could do 2. But the rules for the 1D&D rules for exhaustion are great because it's super simple. You just subtract a 1 to all your D20 checks, right? And then also I do a -1 to your saves as well. So if you have, let's say, a fireball and your DC is 15, you get a -1, it's 14. So it's a little bit easier for people to, survive your stuff. I don't know if that's a 1D&D rule, but that's how I run it. But also, on top of that, they lose 5 feet of speed for every level of exhaustion. So at level 6, they would have -30 to their speed. So most players would be done at that point. They can't move, or at least walk, right? They can still cast or whatever, or with a sword or something, but they're in trouble. They're doing bad. But now if you're a faster class that has, maybe 40, you can go a little bit longer, and but if you're at that point, you're doomed anyway, so it doesn't matter that much. If you guys are liking this video, feel free to leave a comment down below. Let me know if you guys use any of these rules, but if you have any like cool homebrew rules that I don't mention in this, which, dude, there's so many good like homebrew stuff. I can only bring in so much into my game without like my players being like, oh man, now you're changing another thing. But let me know what you guys think about these rules. We're about halfway through the list. Some of these next ones, to be honest with you, I could probably make like a full video on, and I may, if you guys are interested in them, because some of them are pretty complicated, especially when we get to like the spell ones. They're even like I can make one for each of the spells. I'm going to talk, I think, about 3 spells, kinda. And I could pretty much make a video on each of those. I'm going to do kind of like a quick high level like overview of them. And let me know if you guys want me to make one of those. Maybe I'll do a poll or something at some point. And I do plan on doing more because I really like D&D, and I've been wanting to make these videos for like years now. And I finally am, getting up the courage to do it. Let's talk about items and attunements. Items and attunements. So this is a big one because characters use items a lot, and attunements are parts of items, right? So the first one we want to talk about is attunement slots. Normally you get 3. Artificer gets 6 at the end. The way I do it is proficiency bonus. So you start off with less, eventually you'll have more. Artificer at level 18 gets 6 more, so they'll have 12, which is crazy. But if you make it to level 18, it should be crazy. It shouldn't just be like, I'm level 18, I can use like 3 more like items, Yeah. There's a couple of other rules that will kind of help with those too. But the other one is at level 20, they get a +1, I think, for each item that they're attuned to. If you obviously probably don't want to give your player a +12 AC on top of their armor, on top of wearing a shield and all of that. So simple solution, just max it out at 6. But they can still equip 12. Now, another thing that would help with the Artificer is, or at least kind of limit them a little bit, is they can equip 12, but item location as well is or attunement location, magic item location is another thing that I like to play with. So you can't wear 2 helmets. It's pretty obvious, but if you have like 2 headpieces that are overlapping, you may not be able to wear both of them. Or if you have a magic eye, maybe you can't put a helmet over it because magic interference or something like that. Or if you have a chest piece, you can't also wear like a very powerful magical like amulet or something like that. The same thing goes for rings, right? You can't be wearing 10 rings unless you have some special thing that allows you to wear rings. That's a whole magic item that you could wear. Maybe if you equip this 1 ring that's like a legendary item, it allows you to wear 4 extra rings on that hand, giving you all the rings. Maybe there's like 10 rings that you can get that can all be worn together, but then that's a whole like other thing, and maybe the big bad's looking for those or something like that. But I like using that idea of overlapping magic, and you can't have them be too close to each other permanently, otherwise they negate each other and then don't work. Another thing that I like to use is I make more items that I feel like are pretty powerful have to be attuned to. Like, let's say the Cloak of the Manta Ray or something. I believe it's normally not attuned. I prefer to make it attuned because I remember using it in a way that completely was pretty cheap and it broke the game. So if I have an item that I'm like, that thing's pretty powerful, it's a common item, or uncommon, and the players can get it kind of easily, maybe we should just make it attuned so that it can't just be, we're swimming underwater, but we just keep taking off the cloak, taking a couple breaths, handing it over to the other player. They take a couple breaths and we just go back and forth. Because I did that. We escaped a big battle that we just jumped underwater. One of us had the cloak and we just kept swapping it, swimming a little bit, swapping it. Also, swimming rules for D&D are crazy. Players can hold their breath for so freaking long, but that's a whole nother topic that just seems nuts. Like, you're swimming with armor on, I guess. Like, I think we were swimming with armor. It was nuts. It was, we cheated. We cheated. We cheated the system. It was not, I wouldn't suggest that. So make your items attuned, or maybe even if they don't attune to it, it does something. And if they attune to it, it does something extra. There's already some items like that. That's a great way to like kind of balance it a little bit. Maybe you can hold your breath. Let's go back to the manta ray thing. You can hold your breath a little bit longer or something like that without attuning to it. But if you do attune to it, you can hold it or hold your breath permanently, or breathe underwater, or have a swimming speed as well as breathe underwater, you know, or maybe you just have a swimming speed with the cloak, but you can't breathe underwater, you know, stuff like that. So it's always up to you guys to you know, the DM to think of this stuff, but make more stuff attuned, because otherwise they can just stack up a bunch of magic items that just, you know, again, I feel like most of my rules are just to restrict things or make things harder. I mean, 5e is pretty easy for players. It for sure is pretty easy. So maybe that's why. I don't know. I like the challenge though. Like as a player, I like being challenged. I hate going in and just, you know, steamrolling the enemy. Variant encumbrance. I love using it. I think it makes way more sense. Some of my players can only carry like 40 pounds of stuff because everybody dumps their strength stat if they're not like a melee combatant, or even if they're like a monk or something. They just dump their stat. It's like eight strength. Sorry. Well, that means you can only carry this much, which I think makes sense because most people are carrying around 14 swords, 8 clubs, you know, just way too much. And then you have gold. Like I play on a VTT, so way easier to take care of this. So if you're playing like even on D&D Beyond, right? If you have all the weights in there, just use the weights. The rules for the weights. It's just the rules for the items, like the weight of the items. What am I trying to say? It's great. It's harder. Don't get me wrong. It's harder. It makes the players think though, like, can I even wear this armor? It's way too heavy. I'm not strong enough. Can I carry this shield? So another thing that I have that also makes it harder, another rule is armor and shields. One, I lowered the AC of the shield, the stock AC of the shield. I have a whole spreadsheet of shields and different categories of shields. I have light, medium, and heavy shields, and they each have their limitations, and even it's a lot. It's a lot to do in this video, so we're not going to do it. But if you guys want to see that, let me know in the comments. But basically, there's a requirement. So let's just talk about the medium shield, which is the standard, normally +2 shield. Mine in my game is a +1, and you can upgrade it to get it to eventually be a +2. I hate the fact that you can buy a shield and it's pretty much you're going to just have it for the rest of the game. I hate that with armor as well. You just buy armor and you just have it for the rest of the game. But also, there's no limitation on the weight of armor besides the fact that you can't carry it or something. But let's say I had, again, my first character, the one that I played Curse of Strahd with, I was started off as a sorcerer, took 1 level in cleric just so I can get a shield and some like armor proficiency, and but I ended up not using armor proficiency because I had the sorcerer, the draconic sorcerer skin thing, like the harder skin thing. So I already had like a bonus to my AC. So I think my AC was like 18 when we were fighting Strahd, and it was just too, he was too strong. He was too much for a sorcerer, and I didn't like the fact. I did love it as a player, and I felt like pretty good about it, but I go looking back, I think it was too easy. It was too cheap to have to easily just be able to, you know, equip a shield now, and it was a +2 shield because that's what they are, and it just brought my AC up to 18, and so, and my strength was 8. So again, dumping the strength stat is I don't like it. So a regular shield, let's say you need a minimum of 13 strength to use a standard shield +1. You can upgrade it. Same thing with medium armor. You would need, like, let's say a minimum of 13, and that would eliminate the ability to just dip a little toe in the level, and then have it be like, oh, hey, my AC just went up by like 6. And yeah, most people aren't going to play at the level 20 anyway, so taking a dip is usually not a big deal, you know. Spells. Again, this is a huge thing that I could talk about forever. So we're going to try to slim it down. First rule that I like to use is, man, I didn't realize this until I'm like doing this right now, is that all of my rules make the game a little bit harder, just a little bit at a time. So this rule is any item that is normally not consumed for a spell. So let's say a pearl worth 100 gold, I think it is, for identify. Once you have that pearl, that's it. You never have to look for another pearl again, because you can cast identify and it doesn't get consumed. So I like to make it be consumed on everything. So maybe a way that you could do it, if you want to be nice, is make it so that maybe it's half the price. So let's say it's normally 100. Maybe since it's being consumed, you make it only 50, right? That maybe make it a little bit easier. I don't know, but I like to just make it the full value. You can be a little bit more generous with your gold, like rewards and stuff like that. But at the beginning, stuff needs to be hard. At least that's how I feel. Like it's hard enough, I know, but it's all about balance. It's all about, you grant them a little bit extra. It's like, oh, we got these items. Maybe you don't give them as many items that need to be identified. But if you have a wizard that has identify, that took identify, you need to give him something to use identify on. Otherwise, he just like wasted his spell, right? So if you don't have any casters that, or anybody that does that, maybe there's an NPC that they can go to that does it, and he charges 100 gold or whatever every time he does it because it's consuming his pearl. Or maybe he charges less. I don't know, but I would charge 100 and just scale everything from there. So I like when things get consumed because it limits the players on what they can do. They have to make decisions. They have to plan ahead. Like in video games and stuff, I love like the planning process. I don't know if anybody here has ever played Monster Hunter, but Monster Hunter is always fun because you're planning your hunt. You're bringing traps, you're bringing paintballs, you're bringing your whetstones and stuff. It used to be a lot harder. The new one's a lot easier, but it's the planning process is fun. Sometimes we would spend like 20-30 minutes just planning what we're gonna do, and then you get there and then you try to execute, and then most of the time you don't do a good job, and then everybody dies and you go home and you try again next time. Can't do that in D&D though that easily. So that one kind of crossed over with the items because it's the items that are getting consumed and the spells. But now I have a whole resurrection thing. So for the most part, it is the dungeon coach's resurrection thing, except I think I maybe made it a little bit harder and kind of tweaked it a little bit, increased the years, but I'll make a full video about it if you guys want me to do that. I'll probably do that anyway because I like talking about this stuff, and I'm kind of enjoying recording this right now, and it's going to be fun. But resurrection shouldn't be as easy as it is, in my opinion. So that being said, we're going to leave it at that because it should just be harder. Unless it's like one of those games that it's just a goofy game that doesn't matter. But if you want your players to actually care about getting knocked out or dying or any of that stuff, I feel like the stakes have to be there. It has to matter. They have to be able to care about their characters actually dying and not just saying, oh yeah, we'll just resurrect. I personally make it like resurrection magic is super hard. It's a lot more expensive. I don't know, 10 times the price, except for the first one. But basically, Revivify is the only one that you can cast in combat. Everything else, and I think that's how it works normally anyway. But like Revivify and it needs to be done fast. It needs to be done like within a round or two. But I'll go over that in the other video. If I have released that already, which I haven't even recorded it, I'll put it up at the top. But for now, it's good. It's good. It needs to be hard. It definitely does. Now, the big one, right? The big one that everybody always complains about is counterspell. I don't know if I fixed it or if I made it worse, but I also don't like the way that it just works and it's just done. I've watched a ton of videos, everybody's solution to it. They're all good. There's just so many different options that you can do. That's not the stock option. I have two that I really like, and one of them, or the first one, is if you cast, again, we'll always go back to Fireball because everybody knows Fireball. You cast Fireball, I'm going to counter it. So I cast Counterspell. And then I know that your spell is level 3 minimum, right? So I cast it. Mine's also level 3. So theoretically, it should just work. Counters it, right? The way I see it is I cast Counterspell, and I know that you can cast Counterspell, but let's say you don't have Counterspell because you cast Fireball. You can normally cast Counterspell to counter my counter, right? Whatever. What you do is you just put another spell slot into your Fireball. You make it more powerful. It's not actually going to do any more damage, but you're just feeding it more energy. And then I'm like, oh shoot, you're trying to. I see where you're going. And then I go, no. Oh, take 2 more slots here. So then it's a back and forth. So I'm either gonna, just kind of like poker. I'm either gonna match it or I'm gonna raise it. So whoever ends up raising it to the point at the end, whoever has the highest, would win. Or you can make a decision at this point, right? So before you rule it, so you could say whoever has the most would win at the end, or you would follow then the normal rules for Counterspell, trying to counter something that's a higher level. I kind of like the simple thing of just like going back and forth, and whoever put in the most amount of energy or the most amount of spell slots wins. And if they're the same, you would roll against each other. Maybe giving the caster the advantage or something. And then you could also always do, if it gets countered, you can then do a cantrip because your spell didn't work. So at least the person that gets countered can still cast. Now, the other option would be to, before I give you this other option, the reason that Counterspell annoys me is because as a DM, I know what you're casting. I know what levels you have, what level you're going to cast. So to prevent me from meta, I usually will tell the players, like, look, I'm always going to cast it at the base level. That's just what I'm going to do. Just because I don't want them to think that I'm cheating, right? I don't want them to be like, oh, how would you have known to cast it at level 6 or whatever, So because I have more information, I hate doing that. So again, I always try to avoid like the suspicion or any of that stuff that somebody's cheating or even I'm cheating. So, and I think that my players trust me anyway, but I don't want there to ever be any sort of second guessing or whatever you want to call it. The other solution that I came up with is you can have multiple levels of Counterspell. So at level 3, you have Counterspell. At level 6, you have Greater Counterspell. At level 9, you have Superior Counterspell. And you can do that, make it simple, and make it just work. But now if you cast it against a higher level Counterspell, you then lower the chance of success. So then you maybe roll against the spell or something like that. But then that way you can say, I cast Greater Counterspell. And then you would have to take Greater Counterspell as a spell. It would literally be a new spell that you have to remember and you have to have, and it takes up your slot. So do you want to do that? Do you want to commit, or do you just want to have a regular level 3 Counterspell? But obviously, if you use these rules, you wouldn't be using the other rules because then they would just complicate everything. The whole point of these is just to kind of simplify it and make it like, okay, so I'm going to cast Greater Counterspell. Your spell was level 5, so mine succeeds. Done. But then you use a higher level spell. It falls into that same thing. I lean towards that if I just want to make it as simple as possible. The other one I think is more dynamic and more exciting and more of like a beam battle or like wand battle, I like it. And then also with the wand battle one, the beam battle, you can have an ally, if they also have Counterspell, they can add in a reaction to try to block your Counterspell, but so can the enemy. So then they can just be piling on, kind of like Gohan with Goku helping him with his Kamehameha, like that type of thing. Like I think that'd be pretty epic. That is if the players actually wanted to do that. So now we're down to the last one. I don't even know how many there were here. I don't know how you consider this. I'm sorry that this video is so long, but this one is kind of like a hot take. I don't think anybody's ever talked about the shield spell, but I think it's a little OP and I think it's a little boring. So my solution: nobody in my game right now has shield, so they haven't even been using it. So I haven't tested this yet. So but I think it's great. I think it works really well, and I think it balances shield and also makes it better in some ways, in a pinch only. And you have a way to customize it if you want. If you want to be a little bit nicer with it or a little bit meaner like me. And that is, you still learn at level 1, but it only gives you a +1 for every level that you cast it at. So 1 at 1, 2 at 2, 3 at 3, you know, but 9 at 9. If you want to be nicer, you can do 2. You get, you know, double the level of the spell. So at 9, you would have a +18, but you're using a level 9 spell. So it's like you're raising, it's like you're paying for that. Like, it seems huge, right? It seems like, oh, 18, they can pretty much block anything. Sure, but it's a wizard. Their AC is probably like 16 tops for the most part, unless they have some crazy items, which granted at level 18 or whatever, you know, once they have a level 9 spell, okay, sure, yeah, they're probably already pretty strong. Their AC is probably already higher, but they're still burning their level 9 spell slot. So it's like they probably have other things that they're going to probably cast. But let's say if you do again the 2 times the level, at level 5 you'd be doing a +2, but you're burning a level 5 spell slot. Like, you don't have that many of those. So that's my idea for it. I really like it. So you can do 2 if you want to be nice, or if you want to be mean, you do a +1. So I don't think that wizards should be as tanky as they can be. If you make a wizard, certain type of wizard, they can be pretty goddamn tanky, and that's a no-no. That's scary. Like a glass cannon with a metal cannon around it. You can't have that. I think that's just called a cannon. I just realized that. You can't just have a regular cannon. Like, it needs to be glass, okay? Wizards and sorcerers should be glass. It's all about the balance. Thank you guys for hanging in there. If you stay tuned this long, I appreciate it. I hope you guys gained something from this. I had a blast. I love talking about D&D. I can talk about D&D all day. Hopefully we start growing a little community here, and we start getting more people into D&D, and some of you guys enjoyed this. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you guys think about these. And also, if you want me to go more in depth into any of these, like I said, the spell ones, I can go more in depth. I can explain a little bit more. I could come up with some better rules for it, some like written rules. I have ideas. I like to also see what you guys think about all that stuff. But the counterspell one, I can go on for a while with that. Also, the resurrection rules I think are pretty cool. So I'll probably be making a video about that in the future. So let me know if you guys want to see that. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to like the video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye bye.